All right, I'm just going to do this spiel again so that we get this on the recording. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Education USA India webinar. Education USA is a US Department of State, entity. We are a network supported by the US government. We are your official source on higher education. Given that we are official source, we are here to provide you with accurate, comprehensive current information, but I think more importantly, unbiased information. So we represent all the accredited US universities. um, there are, for Education USA, there are over 400 student advising centers that are spread across the world. If you are joining today, from any part of India, know that Education USA Center is located in these 5 cities, as you can see on this slide, in New Delhi, Kolkata, Hyderabad, Chennai, and Mumbai. During the course of the session today, I will be sharing some resources with you so that you can figure out which is the nearest Education USA center for you and get in touch with us. One of the things that I also wanted to discuss today is a common question that we get: that how can we get in touch with Education USA? How can we know more about Education USA? Education USA India now also has a full-fledged functional website, and we have a lot of resources for students on this website. So if you are joining in today, I will really encourage you to get in touch with us through our website. Look at the resources that we have there. See what more questions you have, and then get in touch with us. We'll be more than happy to help you out. All Education USA services are free for anyone who is interested in pursuing higher studies. We have an excellent repository of sessions that we have done in the past that we put out on our YouTube channel. So don't forget to go check out this channel. You should look for the symbol for Education USA India. It's a red symbol that you will see on our YouTube channel. Even today's session, we are going to put it out on YouTube. So if you ever need to refer to this session in the future, you will have access to this session. We do also have a free app, a mobile app on both App Store as well as Google Play Store. This is a great way to keep in touch with, what session is coming up. How can you register quickly? So do check this out. Go to your App Store and, download this app. It's pretty convenient, and you're going to get information for all kinds of virtual sessions that we are doing across all the 6 centers here in India. We do have, lot of different services that we offer to students. One of the things that we do every day is offer a session called US Applications 101 or US Admissions 101. This is a great way to understand, how to figure out, how applications work. What is the timeline to follow? How do you find the right fit? What different kinds of institutions are in the US? So this is a great way to get an overall idea about the application process in the US. Okay, and apart from that, we also do a lot of virtual specialized information sessions like the one today, where we are going to hear a lot, more about what are liberal arts and science colleges in the US. And so without a further ado, I am going to hand it over to today's presenter, Ms. Jessica Hess. Jessica is the Senior Director of International and Partnership Recruitment at the Lycoming College. So, you guys are in for a really great session to really understand what the US has to offer in terms of, different types of institutions, and then asking yourself, what is the right fit for me? So over to you, Jessica. Feel free to, share your screen, and I'll go on mute from here.
Wonderful. Greetings, everyone. Saludos. My name is Jessica Quintana Hess. I'm very glad to be here. Have had a wonderful opportunity to work with Education USA centers in India and in different places all around the world, most recently in Mexico. So very pleased to be here with you today. What we are going to talk about, and as I prepare to share my screen, hopefully that will show all right when we go to do that. All right, so hopefully everyone can see.
You're set.
Wonderful. Thank you for confirming. So we're going to talk a little bit about a liberal arts education and what that means. Currently, I am at a liberal arts and sciences institution, Lycoming College, which is in Pennsylvania. I'm also a graduate of another liberal arts and sciences institution. And, I think as students from, not only all over the world, but also even the United States itself look at studying in the US, there are so many institutions, as was shared already, right? Over 4,000. And those are going to vary, right? And with the way that the education is presented to students, at those institutions respectively is going to affect the way those students learn, the experiences they have at the undergraduate level, which then again will inform, how they progress in their post graduate education or postgraduate employment. So there are some very unique aspects to a liberal arts and sciences foundation that hopefully I'll be able to share with you today, and we'll be able to learn a little bit from each other. There will be time for Q&A at the end, but I do think that there is space for everyone to put any questions they might want into the chat, and we'll have that time facilitated later at the end. But when you think about what a liberal arts college can offer to international students, you might tweak that a little bit, and just think about how you would flourish at a liberal arts and sciences institution, right? You all have ideas about what you might want to study, and I think the beauty of liberal arts and the ethos is that you're going to be able to focus on that area or a couple of areas, but you're also going to get exposure to a variety of different fields. And so as you think about your higher education and what you might want to do, think about the things that are important to you as a person. It might be history, it might be culture, it might be your community and the service and experiences that you've had in your school and greater community. When you have an educational experience in the US, you don't need to just go to a place for that one thing you want to study. You can go to a place that's going to help you cultivate those passions and interests, and meld them in with those areas of study that you want to pursue. So let's think about it that way a little bit as we listen and kind of learn, hopefully, through our time together. So the history of a liberal arts education, I was a history major in college. And so my undergraduate degrees are in history and education, and my master's degree, it focuses on higher education, right? So collegiate students. But the historian in me always wants to start there, right? And when you think about the origins of the liberal arts, it really dates back to ancient Greece, right? Those philosophers and educators, they always focus on a broad range of topics, right? And so they wanted to make sure that the people of the day were really thinking about, understanding, asking questions about what they could see and do and build. And, as that has developed, to the US over time, that liberal arts curriculum in the United States, specifically with some of those first schools in the 1600s here, they were, to include more contemporary subjects like the social sciences and the natural sciences and the arts, right? Fine arts. And they really focused on making a change and reflecting on what changes could be in society and in knowledge itself, which is very similar, right, to those original Greek philosophers and individuals who were their students and under their tutelage at the time. But the core principles really of a liberal arts education is to develop critical thinking skills, right? Allowing students to analyze information from various perspectives and apply knowledge in a diverse array of situations. And that's really what we call now critical thinking, right? And so you've probably heard that through your schools or your counselors or your teachers. And certainly if you work with Education USA, it's wonderful to know a body of knowledge in a certain subject area. But it's really important to be able to pull in information and knowledge that you have from a variety of areas, to inform what you do with that critical body of knowledge, right, that you've acquired. And so now, as you think about a 21st century liberal arts education, I just need to move. I did move forward. Okay. When you think about that, for example, when you go to a university in the United States, and this is an example here at Lycoming College, and what we have done to move that general liberal arts ethos and way of education to a 21st century education for our students, and you'll find this at different schools in the US. You're going to have your majors and minors, right? That more contemporary liberal arts curricula still emphasizes interdisciplinary study, but you also take that ethos and you want a student to have a whole academic curriculum and, in our case, what we call enhanced academic experiences. And that here at our institution includes advisors, in addition to faculty within the departments that you would be working with, who will support students through discovering their academic interest, helping them acquire internships, supporting them through research opportunities, whether they're here on campus or at other institutions or research programs externally. And our structure allows, again, very much for double majors, majors and minors, and not only in things that are very similar, right? So we do have students who will major in business administration and minor in entrepreneurship, but because we are a liberal arts institution and because that liberal arts ethos wants students to be curious and follow their passions and interests, sometimes those majors are very different, right? And so we have students who also are computer science and music double majors, or even creative writing and astrophysics. And that's actually a real, that latter one is, I can think of the student. We had an international Egyptian student come to us several years ago. She's now getting her PhD at Johns Hopkins, but she was creative writing and astrophysics, right? And those are areas that are very different, that many institutions have in the United States and abroad, but often are very siloed, right? Because they are so distinct from one another. But at a liberal arts and sciences institution, you could very well, right, be able to have these very distinct academic programs in your 4 years, right? And graduate with something that, you're very passionate about and you want that in-depth knowledge that might not be possible at other institutions. So we don't particularly limit our students. We encourage them. But again, that 21st century aspect is making sure that our students get field work in those areas. So not only are they learning about these things in the classroom, but that they are also getting a practical experience. That sometimes is helpful because they can re-emphasize, right, what they thought, that this is what they want to do. And they might be in a particular industry, right? If they do actuarial mathematics, and they might work, for a bank. And so, they may be like, yes, this is absolutely what I want to do. But maybe they have that internship and they're like, well, you know what? I actually don't think I want to work as an actuary in this particular field, right, or this particular type of organization. I think I want to take these skills as an actuary and work in higher education or work for a governmental office. And so, again, those experiences are giving students a practical application and experience to complement what they've learned in the classroom. And that's really that new cutting edge. And so I think a lot of people, when they think of a liberal arts and sciences institution or a liberal arts degree, they really limit themselves often to think about, students who might just be studying the humanities or just be, studying in the social sciences, when really there's an array of opportunity for students to, again, pull together very different academic disciplines and combine them in that liberal arts philosophy. So again here, and I apologize, I'm trying to forward on my keyboard and it's not working. So I'm going to have to click over here. So I apologize that I'm going between screens here. At our institution, again, that research is important. And so we want to make sure that students are again, getting some practical experience. Many liberal arts and sciences institutions in the US, they're going to be a little bit smaller and a little bit more intimate. And so those students, and some might only have undergraduate, right? So we only have undergraduate education. So we focus on the Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science students. There are some that have graduate programs, right? Which is another wonderful addition if you want to, kind of segue within one institution. But the fact that we are so undergraduate focused traditionally as liberal arts and sciences schools means that those undergraduates are getting all of the opportunities, to assist faculty with research, to develop their own research, because they're the stars of the show here, generally speaking. And so at our institution in particular, we have an Office of Collaborative Research that has student faculty research it. There are a number of different opportunities, and I wanted to share with you some of the types of opportunities, right, that students at liberal arts and sciences institutions in the US and certainly at our institution get to have. Because sometimes at other institutions, because they are a lot bigger, because they are working with students in graduate programs or doctoral programs, those research opportunities don't always get to trickle down to the undergraduates, right, until they progress into those postgraduate programs. So just to give you a couple of examples, and so we have students who are studying, the natural and sciences and other areas, pre-engineering. Again, I have mentioned astrophysics, right? So a lot of really wonderful opportunities for students who are science-minded, but doing research, having courses where they can discuss, what in terms of the environment, what are the social impacts and influences on the environment. It's a little bit different than just the science itself, right? So they get the research opportunities, but they also, through their science courses, through their other courses, they might be taking an anthropology class, or they might be taking a history class, that discusses some of those impacts, and they can draw conclusions, between what they're learning in some of these courses. Maybe a sociology course that focuses on urbanism, and they'll see, well, okay, so, we're studying this culture or this aspect or this community in my other course. Well, what are the environmental impacts, right? Or through history, what have, people done, and that influences, might be archaeology, right? We have students who do study kind of the sciences, the biological sciences and archaeology, because you can see, what did those communities eat, and then how did they get rid of their food and waste, and then how did that impact the environment. So just there are a lot of really wonderful connections that can be made at a liberal arts institution for students in a variety of different fields. And so I think that's, again, important. These are just a couple of examples. I'm not going to read through them all, but of course on this next slide is Miriam, the student that I shared with you, who was astrophysics and creative writing. But I think, as you look at this, those important aspects of this type of opportunity is, again, at liberal arts and sciences institutions, they are a little bit smaller, allowing for some really wonderful faculty connections to happen between an undergraduate student and their faculty mentors. And then, of course, there may be other staff with different departments like our CEAE, which will help students match up with these opportunities to get an in-depth exploration of what they're studying. And that, again, brings in the social sciences, brings in the humanities, brings in the sciences, no matter what particular major or double major students are pursuing formally. And so, again, a little bit different than the experience that might be had at another type of institution. Following up on, that same type of theme, that undergraduate opportunity to take the liberal arts ethos and put it into a very practical experience is important. And so many liberal arts and sciences institutions will help to work with students rather, for career preparation. And so we want to make sure that students are using the foundation that they've learned in the classroom, but applying it to the workforce, right? And then sometimes students will go right on into careers after graduation, but sometimes they'll continue in a postgraduate education, right? So students who might be pre-law at a liberal arts and sciences institution can major in a number of different things at the undergraduate level. They might have an internship at a law office or at a courthouse. Our city in particular here in Williamsport, we are a city seat, a state seat, and a federal seat. So our students who get to intern downtown at the courthouse really see a variety of different things during those experiences, but then they won't go into a career right away, right? They'll usually go to law school. And that's the in between. But they've had that practical experience and exposure at the undergraduate level, where they do get a greater understanding. And so, again, just as you think about a liberal arts and sciences education, as you maybe talk about it with your teachers, with your Education USA advisors, with your families, I understand that it's a very different and distinct educational way that might be a little bit different than back home in India or in many other international countries. And so, studying a pre-engineering curriculum or data science at an institution like ours might look a little bit different than back home or at another institution in the US. But you're getting that exposure, you're getting the in-depth knowledge in that area, but you're seeing the influence both in the classroom and through these experiences, that are going to give you a greater understanding of how that knowledge impacts the work and impacts culture and impacts society. And so I think that's a good way to describe it, maybe when you're talking with other people who might want to know, why you might be considering liberal arts and sciences education in the US. One last example here from our institution, we had a student, so, looking at kind of the business fields, looking at, a number of campus and community involvement experiences that she had, and was able to take an accounting major and a German minor, right? So a modern languages minor, and have some really wonderful opportunities to go into PricewaterhouseCoopers, which if you are interested in the business fields, you would know that is a very wonderful company, right? And that marriage of a very business oriented major and what is a very culturally aware and kind of humanities major and program allowed her to be a very decorated candidate for the position that she ultimately had. Another very important aspect of what U.S. institutions might have at their campus to complement that academic liberal arts program is going to generally follow also a residential student model, right? So many of those liberal arts universities and colleges in the US are going to be residential. And that's an important aspect of that identity as well. And it's believed to be a really important aspect of that type of education, right? It's a holistic education. So we are developing your mind as a scholar, but we're also developing you as a person. And being a student on campus will help influence that, right? And so again, this allows students and faculty and staff to work daily to integrate both the academic and the co-curricular life for a student. And some institutions, this is just a little bit about our residential model. Some institutions in the US, those liberal arts and sciences colleges and universities might have a 4-year residential requirement, right? So we do, we are a 4-year residential institution, but some will have different residential excuse me, opportunities for students who go to them, right? So some might say, okay, well, you need to live on campus that first year, but then you might be able to move off campus. Sometimes it's a 2-year residential requirement, right? And so that's just going to be something that you can discover as you look at different liberal arts and sciences institutions, is how they utilize that residential experience to complement the education that they're providing a student. There are some of the living and learning communities, as you see here. There's one called First that we have, which is particularly for first year students. But we also have a number of different living and learning communities, and they vary by student interest. So we've had them in the past for the environment. We've had them that focus on international and domestic diversity. We have a creative arts society right now that has an area of campus. There are some that have worked and or been birthed out of a class at our course that a faculty member has taught in our sociology department. And so those are kind of neat because, again, they are opportunities for you to live with a number of different students who you might have a social connection with or an academic connection with, even though you might be majoring in very different things. And so, it might be students that you took a business class with, an entrepreneurship class with, but you might have a computer science major and a theater major and a business administration major, a music major, sociology major, right? A marketing major. And those conversations that you might have on that floor with that programming, although focused on entrepreneurship, are coming from so many different perspectives, right? That theater student, the music student are coming from an arts background. You have a student maybe from the psychology or sociology majors, coming in with that sociological or psychological perspective, just to the conversations that you might have about things on campus or things in your other classes. So again, that residential component is very special, and often those liberal arts and sciences institutions will really capitalize on that residential experience for students. So again, there's an integration and a fluidity between what they're learning in the classroom and what they're experiencing out of the classroom. And so again, the models are often, whether it's a 4-year residential or a 1 or 2-year residential requirement at many of these liberal arts and sciences institutions, they're often developmental in nature because they want students coming into those residential spaces as first-time freshmen or first-time transfer students, getting a sense of belonging, understanding what that campus community is like. But then as they grow, they also gain some independence, and whether they stay on campus or kind of join the greater community that that institution is at, they're really going to synthesize what they learned and those experiences and continue to move with them as they progress through their studies and as they grow. The other aspect that I touched upon a little bit during this is not only that residential experience, but the co-curricular life, right? And so many institutions of higher education in the US will have honor societies. That's not limited to liberal arts and sciences institutions. There are, many other institutions where there are very decorated honors programs and honors organizations affiliated with different academic programs. And so, we do have those. And so sometimes students will find a great connection there, right? So, with some of our different honor societies in particular. But then there are student clubs and organizations that also exist so that students can make those connections between their academic life, their social life, and their growth and their interests and the things that they like to do for fun, right? And so sometimes those organizations aren't particularly affiliated with an academic area at all. They are, part of who that person has been. As an individual coming into our communities, or maybe it's something new that a student wants to try that helps them again develop and grow. And that might be influence from a classmate, from a peer, from a hallmate, from a roommate, and they get engaged in a different way that also helps them grow, which again broadens, who they are as an individual, and then complements again who they are as a scholar as they prepare to leave. And so again, that's another hallmark where, while many colleges and universities in the United States will have active student life programming, at a liberal arts and sciences institution as a more intimate and smaller, typically learning environment, you're going to have, relationships with people inside the classroom and outside of the classroom in a way that's a little bit different than other institutions. And so, we certainly are no exception to that, and use it again as a complement to what our students are engaging with in the classroom. So again, your family is going to really want to know what are going to be the outcomes for you should you choose to go to a liberal arts and sciences institution. So I did want to make sure that I provided some information for you here that again will help you understand and articulate, right, some of the benefits of having that liberal arts foundation as you go on into developing what we call, right, a career and life of meaning. And so, this is an image that I was able to find. There's an organization that supports the liberal arts and sciences education here in the U.S., and this is a graphic from there. But I think as you look at the salaries of students across the board as they graduate, there's not too much of a distinction, right? And obviously, this is in general. If you look at students who maybe are studying and more focused on the STEM fields, that baseline is going to be a little bit higher. If you are looking at, students who are taking what they're learning and doing education as a field of study, it's a little bit more static. But what you do see is, there's kind of that general starting salary for any graduate. This is kind of that average salary for a liberal arts grad. Where you see a big distinction for liberal arts and sciences graduates is that in mid-level to upper level career, they will make significantly more. And I think, I don't think, right? So research shows that, again, the reason for that is going to be, you might have a student who studies engineering, right? And I'll give you actually a real life example. My husband was an electrical engineer from his undergraduate degree. His master's is in education and counseling, so he did switch careers. But his undergraduate degree was in electrical engineering. He worked for a wonderful U.S. governmental sponsored company that worked in government defense, and went in, and he had a cohort of other young grads that came into the company at the same time. There were about 5 of them. And within 2 years, in going into his 3rd year, my husband had been put in charge of a working group at the company, which included people who had been there for many years. And he had been working on radar specifically and test engineering. And it was the skills that he had acquired from his liberal arts background that allowed him to be tapped for that opportunity. So all of these young people who went into that company in his cohort were wonderful engineers and very bright. But my husband, through his education classes, through his psychology classes, through some of the business type classes where he was doing presentations and, had developed all of these other skills, right? Those soft skills of being to work together as a team, being able to work cross-generationally, being able to take information and synthesize it and present it in a way that was that other people were able to understand, right? All of those soft skills that he developed from his liberal arts background was what allowed him to be, kind of promoted in that way. And so that is kind of an example, right? That, while there are many people with wonderful degrees who, will enter a workforce with a similar body of knowledge, the fact that those soft skills that they have are highly sought after, allow them to kind of move up a little bit more oftentimes in their careers. And certainly you see that long term. So again, what are those sought after skills? I'm not going to read these. It's there for you to be able to look at. But in general, when employers are asked about the traits that they look for in workers, they overwhelmingly are going to say that those skills that are emphasized in a liberal arts program, right? Creativity, problem solving, communication, as I mentioned, independent thinking, and then also teamwork, right? Those aspects, those skills are really important for the livelihood, for the creativity, the innovation that is needed in a number of different fields and occupations. And so often, those are the things that companies and employers are looking for. And so again, there's an organization, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, and it's an organization that looks at, right, the preparedness of a variety of different majors and fields and types of students, from the US, et cetera, who then, are going into the workforce. But they surveyed employers, that organization surveyed employers across the country in the US to determine what they looked for when they hire new employees. And they showed that, again, those graduates, with the right skills, not necessarily the right major, are really, what they're looking for, because they can take their new employees on, they can train them, but if they have the skills, right, to learn, the skills to present, the skills to work as a team, the skills to cross collaborate within different departments within a company, those employers can teach the specifics of an industry, but they can't necessarily teach those skills. And the students that are coming from a liberal arts and sciences program are generally going to have those skills because of the way that they have been educated, because of the framework and the pedagogy that the faculty use within the classroom, and within the different academic units and between the different academic units, are helping students develop those skills. So again, these are just a few examples, of ideas that you might be able, to think about and pursue depending on your example. And I know there are many other majors that, that Lycoming has that aren't particularly represented in these bullet points. But again, just to give you a general sense of how students can think about what they're studying, of course, but in what context, right? So in a liberal arts context, these are some of the things that you often see because of that well-rounded education that students will typically acquire at a liberal arts and sciences institution. So, I am actually going to end the formal presentation there. I wanted to make sure that we did have some time. And so, I hope that this was at least helpful to generate some basis for you to have an understanding of what maybe some of the distinctions are of a liberal arts and sciences education and ethos at an institution. You'll find that I've focused a lot, obviously, on liberal arts and sciences institution, but with those many, many other colleges and universities in the United States, many will have a liberal arts degree. And so while they aren't kind of fulfilling that ethos holistically as an institution, they see the value and importance, and some of them have composed departments or degrees that will allow students to study kind of in that philosophy of having many different disciplines influence kind of how you're learning, and then obviously how you interact once you leave your formal education. So on the slide is my email address. Also, there is, for anyone who might be interested in learning more about Lycoming College, there is a QR code there with a form that you can fill out at your convenience that will allow you to receive more information and then get in touch with me also. So if you want to take a minute to do that, I'm very grateful again for the time that I've been allowed to share with you today, and very grateful for my counterparts at Education USA. It's lovely to see them, although the last time was in person and online isn't the same, but it is wonderful to see you all. But yeah, if there are any questions, I will stop sharing and maybe we can go back.
Actually,
Oh, yes.
Jessica, leave the slide on so that, if
Oh,
anyone wants to,
okay.
take that
Okay.
take their time
Sure.
to, fill out the form, we can leave it here.
Okay.
But
Excellent.
Thank you so much. I think, in a nutshell, you have given such a great idea about what liberal arts and science colleges can offer to Indian students specifically in this context. Because, we talk to students every day, day in and out. And a lot of times what we come across is that a lot of students are under impression that liberal arts and science colleges, as you mentioned, are only for students who want to study humanities or
Right,
sociology, right?
right.
And that's not the case. And it is important. So I see a couple of students who've joined in today. It's important that you not just get buried in the idea of finding the right fit, but really asking yourself what kind of a setting I will be a happy student, inside of a classroom
Mhm,
and outside of a classroom,
mhm,
right? And just wanting to study, say, physics, or wanting to study
mhm.
just computer science is not going to be enough. And I think one couple of things that you really, hit the nail on were the future of workforce, as you said, Jessica, is going to not just look at your technical skills. They're going to look at how can you negotiate, how can you
Right.
work in teams, a diverse, teams.
Mhm,
Your communication skills. I can tell you students who, especially are interested only in the STEM fields, the
mhm.
technology fields or the natural sciences, we get buried with understanding the theories and the concepts and how to implement that. We sometimes lose the connection that communication is the key
Right.
when you want to tell someone else about, let's say, what you're doing in
Right.
your field.
Right. Yeah, agree. I mean, it's wonderful to have a beautiful mind, but if you can't share, what you know and that body of knowledge in a way, that influences your coworkers or your society or your family, right? When you try to explain what you're doing. Yeah, and those are the skills, as you said, and as I had
Absolutely.
previously shared. And I have a colleague, who I've had the pleasure of traveling with and working with, and sometimes he does a presentation when we're together for students and counselors. And one of the things he says is that, some of the jobs that will exist in 10 and 20 years, right, when these students are in their careers, some of those opportunities, we don't even know what they are. I mean, if you think about AI, that is everything right now. But 20, 30 years ago, there were
That's right.
cartoons that showed AI, so people thought about it, but it wasn't realistic. And look at where we are now, right? And so, that liberal arts ethos, that ability to engage and synthesize, different contexts, allows students to prepare and be flexible, right? When you are
Absolutely.
in a job, in a company, and that company changes directions, if you are one dimensional, you might not be able to move with that company, right? And so again, those skills and that flexibility, the ability to look at things in different perspectives and take a step back, those are all those soft skills that
Hmm.
students acquire at a liberal arts and sciences institution in particular. And obviously, there are many other types of institutions and students as humans, as adults, right? Young adults, they'll have the choice to do that at any school, right? And
That's
any
right.
place that they are. But again, it's just so much more natural because it is the way that our faculty, our curricula are designed for
Yeah,
students.
and I would also give a couple of examples. I had a student that I was helping with the applications. Wanted to study biochemistry. It was very clear in her head that biochemistry is what I want to study, right? And taking one class in sociology once she started her program, she said that it changed my view of how I look at sciences now.
Mm-hmm.
When I was studying in the US, learning about the history of sciences was so critical in my
Mm-hmm.
research, right? So it's not just, as you said, just the one dimensional, one directional, way of studying something. You have to have a
Right.
curious mind to understand
Right.
what are different perspectives that you can have to,
Yeah.
look at one simple thing. Another thing, as you mentioned, I would like to also give this example. Another student who was studying during the pandemic, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this student was, actually double majoring, I think, in one of the natural sciences, but also creative writing. And it was
Mm-hmm.
hard for her as an international student to find an internship in the natural sciences. But because she had the creative writing as a second major, it was possible for her to find those
Right.
opportunities, which worked out for her,
Yep.
and then
Yeah.
eventually
And
she
had a
again.
remote position probably. Yep. Yep.
Absolutely. And so,
Mhm.
it's really, really important for students to, go and think a little bit outside the box. Think beyond, what you read on, say, Quora.com or Google, and
Right.
really do the work that you need to do to find the right fit. I have, a couple of questions, but I will also ask, students who are still around, then ask your questions. This is your
Yeah.
one opportunity, to maybe you have a question specific to Lycoming College. Feel free to ask if you have a question about entry requirements, or you
Mhm.
want to know that, oh, I'm interested in this. Can I study this at Lycoming? Is that combination possible? So feel free to do that. You will, guys, you will also see in the chat box, I have shared two resources with you. One resource is, all the information about Education USA India, how to get in touch with us, what are the official websites to refer to, where is our YouTube channel, and things like that. Best way to get to know about us is, I'm sure everyone is on social media. So we do have an Instagram handle called Education USA India, where we put up, upcoming sessions. So keep an eye out on that. So look at that document, and the second document I also have is all the upcoming sessions. So if you are from Mumbai region, we are doing a couple of in-person sessions. These are great opportunities to come and actually talk to the US universities in person. We have another session, another webinar coming up, next week, on Friday, where we are going to talk about the application process. So it doesn't matter whether you are in the 12th grade or you're going to start your journey next year. It's always good to gather this information to make those right decisions, right? So one question, and I know, Jessica, you've done like a fantastic presentation. You covered almost everything in your presentation. But I wanted to, kind of understand from your point of view, who do you think is a right fit, for Lycoming College? What are some of the things that you would like to tell us?
Yeah, no, I think that's a wonderful question. Thank you. And I would say like Lycoming College or liberal arts and sciences institutions, right? It's I think one of the things that we are going to be looking for are students who follow what you just said. They have an interest. They know a discipline or maybe a couple of disciplines that they want to study. But they are also intellectually curious. And so, they want to see, how different philosophies or ideas uh, kind of go into influence those areas of study. And some of them are already doing it, in their high schools, and maybe it's academically, or maybe it's through programs. Maybe they have joined a robotics program at their school, or maybe they have engaged in community service, and those types of students are going to do well at a liberal arts and sciences school, because they are contributors, they are learners, right? And often they become lifelong learners. I think that's the other distinction too with liberal arts and sciences graduates. Is that even when they are serving as like Cumming has an alum who was one of the leaders of Ford Asia, and he lived abroad for most of his adult life, and he was able to function cross culturally, obviously, very well. But he was a lifelong learner, right? I mean, he continued to be curious and is very well read, and would read in his free time, right? And that's the type of engagement, right? So as we work with students, I love reading the essays that students write us, because it tells me about them, right? And when they might be telling me a story about themselves, or something that happened in their family, or something that they really care about, or the way that they talk about the academic interests that they want to pursue at Lycoming. All of the things that they tell me about that in that essay is very important, right? And it tells me who they are. And it's those stories, it's those narratives, that we're looking for, right? So students who, are engaged, who are curious, who are, what we call go-getters in the U.S., right? Students who don't just wait for things to happen for them, but that have the gumption to make things happen for themselves and for others. I think those are the students that, we try to look for. and that we also, try to develop as they're here. But, sometimes it's the students who don't know, right? You might have a candidate that you're working with who actually has no idea what they want to study, but they know they want to study in the US. A liberal arts and sciences institution like Lycoming would be amazing for them because they will have exposure to different areas and they might find one class or one teacher or a friend that they have a conversation with in a discipline that inspires them. And that becomes their passion and their academic focus, right? So it's Lycoming and liberal arts institutions like were wonderful places for students who aren't sure. And again, I mean, I would share most of our international students are absolutely double majors, major minors in a variety of areas. And sometimes it's because they have all of those interests. Sometimes they've developed them when they're here. But sometimes it's, I wanted to study film and video arts in the US. And my family said, I can't go to the US and study film. But if I go to Lycoming, I can double major in business administration and film and video arts. And it's a marriage, right, of different disciplines that, make that student have the ability to follow their passion, but gives the family the feeling of the worthwhileness of the investment that they're making in sending their student to study here. And then, they might go back and work at the family company or open a business back home, right? And so, again, it's Lycoming, certainly because we are so intimately focused, we're only 1,200 students and only undergraduate. If a student has a double major, they have the faculty member from each of those departments supporting them. And then they have those career advisors helping them, find the internships, find the research opportunities, and then helping them figure out what they're doing once they leave Lycoming, right? So that's 4 people that one student has in their corner, to help support them through and post their journey at Lycoming.
That's great. I think we have like a few more minutes. I would like to ask, there is also this misconception, Jessica, that students think that, oh, I won't be able to pursue my research interests if I go to a liberal arts and science college. Would you like to, talk a little bit about that and how that works at a liberal arts and science college?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think I've kind of two ways to articulate, what that, or 2 ways to answer that. One is, and I'll take a step back and do the less obvious one. One is that research doesn't only happen in the hard and natural sciences, right? I mean, we have history majors who are doing, research studies. Our archaeologists, when they are at digs, either domestic or internationally, they're doing research. I mean, they are looking and uncovering historical artifacts, right? And archaeological artifacts. I mean, when you are looking at students in music, there's research that happens in our fine arts, right? And we have an art history major here, right? Like there is research that happens across humanities and social sciences as well that I think people don't think about, right? Because they often, when they think of research, they are, right? We have a Clean Water Institute here at Lycoming, and we own a field station, and our students are doing wonderful, scientific biology, environmental science focused research, with the rivers and streams, estuaries here in our local area. Our biology department has teamed up several years with our outdoor and leadership education department. And they led students to an excursion right before COVID, the last kind of time they went to Arizona, and they hiked, down the Grand Canyon, they rafted the river, but they actually were taking soil samples during their time there. And when they came back, they did a comparative study between the soil samples from the arid climate and then the soil samples here, right? In the central Pennsylvania region. So, those experiences, are many, and they're happening cross-disciplinary, and they're also happening in departments that, are not often thought of, right? It's again, it's
Yeah,
not in silos.
absolutely.
The other way I would answer that briefly is that, liberal arts and sciences, again, Lycoming specifically, but others as well, very undergraduate focus. And so at other institutions, that research is happening, but often it's graduate students or doctoral students, right? And so The undergraduate focus allows students, all the instrumentation that you saw in those pictures, those are our undergraduates using, that instrumentation. And that's across our hard sciences. We have a state-of-the-art planetarium on campus. And so those students who are studying astrophysics, they're getting to study with that technology, but there's also a course that teaches them how to use that technology. And it's selective because it's a very, very expensive piece of equipment, but they're getting to do that at 18, 19, 20 years old, right? That other people might not get to do until they get a job somewhere that has a planetarium, a space center, or, a natural museum, or, whatever it might be. And so, again, those opportunities are very unique in that the liberal arts and sciences education and environment allows undergraduates to do these really incredible things in terms of research. And again, when students might be going to Miriam, the student from Egypt, she interned with NASA. And, that is a national, international, competitive internship, that she had, and she was a very decorated student. But think about how many other students at other colleges, universities, who had to put together that application for that internship together and may have not had the type of support Miriam did. Miriam was able to work with her faculty members. She was able to work with our career advisors to put together her portfolio in a way that took all of the amazing things that Miriam had accomplished, but package them in a way that set her apart just in the process. Again, because of the type of institution we are and how we value our students.
That's wonderful. I think these examples are really what it makes relatable to students. And I really hope through today's webinar you got to learn something new about liberal arts and science colleges in the US, so that you don't just categorize everything under just one umbrella of comprehensive universities, and that's where I'm going to be able to do what I want to. Remember that we are all different. What works for each one of us is different. If you are a student who really thrives in classrooms that have only few students, then liberal arts and science colleges are a way to go. So when you're doing your research, when you're finding out what are the right fit, don't just go by what you have heard about or what you have read on internet, but actually do your research. When you have questions, reach out to Education USA. We will be more than happy to talk to you and discuss your queries. I really hope that today you were able to learn something new about higher education in the US, and that will help you in your process of application or your child's process of application. Um, Remember that Education USA is a US, State Department network that is a global network of student advising centers. So we are your official source. So reach out to us, ask questions. We'll be more than happy to, answer those queries. Jessica, I really want to, say a big thank you, because we really appreciate the effort that universities put in, to present such lovely information, such, informative presentations. We really, really, appreciate that you take this time out, and it's also a learning experience for all of us as well. So thank you so much, and I hope that we continue this collaboration, Jessica. So everyone, thank you for joining the webinar, and wherever you are, have a good, great weekend. I hope, Jessica, you have a long weekend lined up with a holiday on Monday. So thank you again. I really, really appreciate. And for the students who have joined in, I hope that you enjoyed today's presentation as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all very much. Best wishes, and I'll look forward to working with you all.
Thank you, Jessica.